would like to introduce Dr. Jan Elen from the KU Leuven to you. He is a full professor at the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences and a coordinator of Leer Project 4 together with Dr. Carlos Gomez. In this interview, we would like to talk about the integration of research into teaching at the National Agrarian University La Molina. Could you please give a short introduction on the integration of research into teaching for those who are not familiar with this topic?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because the notion of integration of research into teaching gets sometimes different meanings. People attribute different meanings to it. One is that students have actually to do research in the context of their courses. That's kind of a restrictive interpretation of the notion. People in general in the literature tend to have a little bit more a broader perspective, or take a broader perspective, meaning that any attempt to refer at research, to clarify that the teaching or the content in the teaching is based on research, any kind of attempt to help students to be able to do research would also be considered to be the integration of research into teaching. So you have a broad meaning in which you can have all aspects of in which you would have that all kinds of research are discussed in teaching and presented in teaching. That's a broad meaning, and a restricted meaning in the sense that some students actually engage themselves in doing research.
So in this interview we'd like to approach it from a more broader perspective.
Okay, that's good.
Could you please elaborate on why the integration of research into teaching is crucial or necessary, or not at all, at universities, or in other words, in academic teaching?
That has of course a very, very long history, and I think the link between research and teaching is what makes higher education and academic education so specific. And I think the basic element over there is that, or why do we do it, is if we would not do it, we would present our courses as if they are given, as if they are fixed, as if they will never change, because we know it all. By introducing research, students become aware that we do not know everything yet, and perhaps that even what we know now might be wrong, or that if we do further research, if we study more, that we get new insights, that we can approach the phenomena that we discuss from another perspective. A clear example is we now pay a lot of attention to global warming, for instance, and especially at agricultural universities this is a hot topic, sustainability. But if you look 50 years ago, it was hardly discussed. It was not a concern. It is research that has brought about the insight that there are certain changes happening, and that there are certain reasons behind those changes, and that if we want to adequately deal with it, we have to really think and reflect and do further research on it. I think the most important reason why we do it is that when we integrate research into teaching, we also integrate an insight in that teaching that for me is really crucial. It is that everything we know, knowledge, even if it's in the top books, if it's in the top science, it's a construction. It's not something that we digged out of the ground and then we found it and then we cherry it. No. Our knowledge is constructed, our scientific knowledge is constructed, meaning that it can change, and meaning that everybody can contribute to that. And that's of course something that we want our alumni to do, that they they can help in strengthening the fields that they are engaged in, that they can think along, that they can criticize, that they can reflect for themselves, so that they can see, yeah, but what is the evidence? Is it really helpful, or do we have to take another perspective? And so, in addition to becoming aware that all our knowledge is constructed, the other thing is that we induce and encourage the students to think for themselves. That they should not simply accept what is given, but that they have the right, and not even the right, but even the responsibility to always be critical and always to think for themselves, make up their own mind, weigh the evidence, and then come to a balanced conclusion.
So you would consider that the main benefit of integrating research into teaching for students' learning? Or are there other benefits that you would like to stress as well?
No, it's of course very important for student learning, but also they also learn how to do research, they learn how to read research, which is of course not only important for themselves, but also that they can then contribute to the development, they can contribute to the development of society, of the research. They can become creative. If you say you can think for yourself, yeah, you can, suddenly the world goes open, because then you can say, oh, there might be alternatives, and so, yeah, if you see, if you're allowed to understand that there are alternatives, you open for new problem solving, and that's of course also very important. It's not only for their own learning, but also because what they learn, the insights, they can use it in their future professional life, and I think that's very important.
So when we go specifically to the context of UNAM, do you have any specific recommendations for how teachers or administrators can apply this integration of research at the course level, at the curriculum level maybe?
I think, as I said, for me, the integration of research into teaching is the vital component of academic education. So the advice is that you cannot but integrate research into teaching. So any course that presents itself as being the ultimate truth, I think should be totally avoided. Of course, you need some kind of introductions in that you get to know what the research in a particular field has already found so far. And so there is some need to get some basic and a good understanding of what kind of alternatives have already been considered and what options have already been taken. But I do hope that this is limited, and so that exams, that evaluation system that basically only focus on memorization, on memory, on treating research results as facts, that I hope that we can avoid them, and that we rather encourage students to engage in problem solving, that they are engaged in looking for new literature, things that are not in the course text. So I think if you do it, and perhaps that's the most important advice, is please do not stick to what it is right now, but if you integrate research into teaching, you open a whole lot of new possibilities of things you can do, really interesting things also for students. And so for me, at the course level, I think I would encourage everybody to see, yeah, but okay, what's the research basis of my course? And how can I show to students what the research basis of what I am teaching is actually about? That's certainly at each of the course levels. At the course level also, that you look at evaluation, that you rather go for understanding, for critical analysis, rather than on simple memorization. And at the curriculum level, I think it's really worthwhile to develop some kind of lines that initially, of course, you introduce students more into the domain, into the discipline, but gradually the students, they become partners, they become co-researchers, they are not simply students anymore, but together with the teachers, they dig into problems and they try to find out how they can be approached, how they can be researched, so that they gradually develop the research skills and also the research attitude, a critical attitude towards things. And I think we really have to look at curricula that they allow students to the more and the more develop in that direction.
Wonderful. So to sum up, what message do you have for the teachers at UNAM?
If you want your students to be able to think for themselves, then you have the responsibility to think for yourself as well. So, if we want our students to be critical thinkers, to be research-like alumni, the first thing I would say, encourage people to do, is to look very critically at your course as it is right now, and start there, and then see, oh, what can I do perhaps in a different way, so that I can encourage my students more to think for themselves, and then you can be a role model. Then you can show, look, I do not accept everything that's given. I try to really go into a discussion, and I think then we have made some progress, then we did something nice. And as I said, the underlying thing that students have to understand, and that we also have to understand, is that knowledge is not something that's in the books, or the information that is in the book is constructed. And so that is the basis, I think, for all kind of critical thinking and for all our research work.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome.